Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5. There are three subjects that Solomon talks about in this chapter: worship, words, and wealth. Worship, words, and wealth. Look at verse number 1. I won't re-preach this. But in verse 1 through 4, he talks about worship. Keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God, and be more ready to hear than to give the sacrifice of fools, for they consider not that they do evil. Be not rash with thy mouth, and let not thine heart be hasty to utter anything before God. For God is in heaven, and thou upon earth, therefore let thy words be few. For a dream cometh through the multitude of business, and a fool's voice is known by multitude of words. When thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it, for he hath no pleasure in fools. Pay that which thou hast vowed. We talked about that Sunday night. Solomon, it seems like, goes into the temple and he observes people worshiping, and he listens to their prayer, and he watches their sacrifice, and he offers some advice on worthy worship. And Sunday night we said, number one, be careful of empty worship. He says, keep thy foot when thou goest to the house of God. Take heed to how you approach the house of worship. How you get here, how you prepare your heart for worship will determine what happens when you're here. And then he says, be careful of careless prayers. In verse number 2, be not rash with thy mouth. Don't be hasty to utter anything before God. You know, the altar should not be a strange place. When God urges your heart, you ought not resist that. You ought to be quick to come to the altar, but don't just pray vain words here. Don't let your prayers be cliches and canned phrases. Pray from the heart. So be careful of empty worship. Be careful of careless prayers. And then be careful of worthless promises. Verse 4, when thou vowest a vow unto God, defer not to pay it. Defer means to put off or to postpone. And so when you make a promise to God, He expects you to keep it. So verse 1 through 4, he's talking about worship. Worship. Then in verse 5 through 7, he says something about words. Look at verse number 5. Better is he that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Neither say thou before the angel that it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at thy voice and destroy the work of thine hands? For in the multitude of dreams and many words there are also divers vanities, but fear thou God. It says in verse 5, better is it that thou shouldest not vow than that thou shouldest vow and not pay. Now I know that it's talking about making a vow to God, but really the principle applies to any promise that you make. And I think that lying has become so ingrained in our culture and in the fiber of our beings that a lot of people lie without even recognizing that they're lying. Well, you ought to be a person of your word. If you say that you're going to do something, be somewhere, then that ought to weigh heavily on your mind to be an honest person. We ought to be so conscious of our words and determined that if we say it, we're going to do it. Now, I could run off kinds of rabbit trails right here, and I won't, but I'll tell you one of the easiest ways to lie is, preacher, I'll be there at 10 o'clock. Did you know that 10:05 is not the same as 10 o'clock? It's not. And if you say that you're going to be there at a particular time, then you should be there at that particular time. You say, what happens if I don't? Verse 6. Suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. I had occasion to listen to some boys talk. And I just thought, have you ever met a boy who had a real sharp mouth? You know what I'm talking about? I see teenage girls shaking their head, yeah. I mean, he thought that he was witty and that he was wise, but really was just obnoxious is what he was. You know what I'm talking about? everything that he says is an insult or a put down or a comeback. And he thinks he's clever. It's called rude. That's what it's called. Okay? You hope he'll grow out of it. You hope. But I've seen some big boys, adult boys. I've seen some that didn't grow out of it. Listen, just because you think it doesn't mean you have to say it. Well, I thought it, I might as well say it. No. Don't say everything you think. So learn the rare skill of keeping your mouth shut and your words to yourself, and you'll save yourself out of a lot of trouble. So, for not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Here's a strange statement in verse 6. Neither say thou before the angel that it was an error. Wherefore should God be angry at thy voice and destroy the work of thine hands. Now, every single commentary that I have looked at changes angel to messenger and makes that a preacher or a priest. And the way they do that is because angel and messenger sometimes come from the same Hebrew word, so they take the liberty to fix the verse. Okay? I think you ought to leave it angel. That's what I think. All right? I don't think the verse needs fixed. And so I'm going to leave it as angel, and then I'm going to tell you, I don't know what it's talking about. Okay? I don't know what angel. Somebody said it's talking about a guardian angel. I don't know. I'm just being honest with you. Don't change the word, but I don't understand it. But here's what I will say. Whoever the angel was, it sounds like that the man made a vow, realized he spake in haste, and now is making an excuse by saying, well, that was an error. He's looking for a loophole is what he's doing. It sounds like to me, to say thou before the angel that it was an error, he's looking for a loophole to get out of the vow. Now, I know that God will not hold you accountable for a stupid vow or a sinful vow. I believe that Jephthah, I believe he literally sacrificed his daughter. I don't believe he had to. Okay? I believe there's a provision in the law where he could have come and he could have confessed that thing, and he didn't have to. God would not made him sacrifices a human sacrifice, all right? So I believe that if you made a sinful vow, a stupid vow, that there is a but people are always, some people are always looking for an excuse. So in the vein of keeping your word and not looking for loopholes and not trying to find an excuse, in that vein, if that becomes your lifestyle, always have an excuse, God's going to work against you. That's what the verse says. God's going to work against you. You never get ahead in life making excuses because you don't leave any room for God to work. So there's something about words here. In verse number 8, and this is where we'll stay tonight, there's advice on wealth. Now, three subjects: worship, words, and wealth. And they seem unrelated to each other, but really they are very related. Because if you worship God, it will affect your speech. Oh, it will. And did you know that that your worship affects your view on money? If you have a worship, now y'all help me out a little bit tonight, all right? If you have a worshipful heart, it will enlarge your heart for you to want to be a giver. Now, you may not have the resources to give, but you will want to give. And the Bible has so much to say about money and wealth, and it's one of my favorite subjects. I don't shy away from it. And there's two extremes. There's the health and wealth prosperity gospel preacher that says God wants everybody to be rich. If that's the case, I've been out of the will of God for 49 years. Okay? But then there's the others who almost would say that poverty is a virtue and God just wants to keep us poor. The truth is that God has given us incredible resources. He gives us eternal principles in His Word as to how to manage those resources. If you'll read the Bible, it'll tell you how to make money. It'll tell you how to save money. It'll tell you how to spend money. It'll tell you how to give it away. And if you'll follow Bible principles, you will have all that you need. All that you need. Now, I just came from Africa, so I'm going to tell you, there are no poor people in this building. There aren't. If you think you are, let's go take a trip. All right? So I am speaking to a lot of wealthy people. A lot of wealthy people. So he gives us some warnings about, well, I thought about this today. I've had a $20 bill in my pocket for several days. Been proud of not spending this $20 bill. And it's hard for me to read it, but this $20 bill was printed in 2003. All right, 2003. So this sucker's been around for, well, since 2003. 16 years. 16 years. There is no telling where that $20 bill has been. Right? That $20 bill has probably been used to buy groceries, pay a bill, eat at a restaurant. In fact, it might be used to eat at a restaurant tonight, that $20 bill. I know that this $20 bill has been to Africa. I know that because I had it in my pocket in Africa. I haven't spent it since then. So it has traveled around the world. Somebody probably used that $20 bill to buy roses for a girlfriend. And somebody else may have used it to send a letter to break up with the girlfriend. Right? That $20 bill was probably used at some time to buy groceries for a real poor family. It was probably used by a real poor family to buy lottery tickets as well. Right? That $20 bill right there may have been used to purchase a CD of godly music. It may have been used to purchase a movie ticket at a seedy theater. Right there. You think of the endless hands that it has passed through, the endless places that it has gone, the good it has done, the bad it has done. And it's not just $20. It is a tool for good or bad. And if you ever change your perspective on money, on what it is, it'll help you to become a better manager of it. Solomon's going to give us some warnings about the danger of wealth. The first one is in verse number 8. It is the danger of discrimination. Look at verse number 8. If thou seest the oppression of the poor and violent perverting of judgment and justice in a province, marvel not at the matter, for he that is higher than the highest regardeth, and there be higher than they. Now Solomon talks about two injustices. And the first injustice is people being taken advantage of, justice being perverted. He says, if thou seest the oppression of the poor and violent perverting of judgment and justice in a province. Did you know that sometimes the justice system is not fair? Sometimes some people get punished and other people get scot-free having done the same thing. So some people are oppressed and they are pushed around. Sometimes they are denied common rights because they don't have the power or the resources to fight back. Rich people can buy themselves out of trouble. They can push their weight around. So it seems like that there is a two-tiered justice system. And here's a common denominator in it. It's money. Money. Did you know that poor people are easily taken advantage of? Poor people are not shown any favors. Poor people are not asked for their opinions. Poor people don't have any prestige. They're not made to feel important. Poor people don't sit on corporate boards, and poor people don't get elected to city council, and poor people don't get asked to join the prestigious clubs. That's just the way that it is. Money buys privilege, and money buys influence. How many times have you read of some famous person, some actor that commits a crime and he should go to jail for it, and then you hear the case has been dropped? That's money. Money discriminates when it comes to justice, when it comes to elections, when it comes to pleasure. And if you don't have money, then you don't get to participate in the lifestyle of the rich and famous. That's just the way that this world, I'm not saying it's right, I'm just telling you that's the world that we live in. And people with money tend to walk on people without money. Sure. Man with money can hire the best lawyer around. right? Man with money, he can buy some influence. He can buy his way into office. He can influence laws that a poor person can't. That makes him richer, makes the poor poor. He knows how to manipulate the tax system, the court system. There's a lot of honest people that don't get a break because they're poor. Sometimes a poor man gets a raw deal. 95% of men, and you can think about this anything you want to, all right? This is what it is. 95% of men sitting in prison right now are there on a plea deal. Not because of the judge, but because of the prosecutor. Plead guilty, take 5 years, or we'll take you to court, and you get 20. And if your lawyer is a public defender and you don't have the money, what are you going to do? You see, say what you want to, but the justice system is often rigged in favor of the rich man. That's what verse number 8 says. But verse 8 says, don't despair. There is one higher than the highest. That's what it says. For he that is higher than the highest regardeth, and there be higher than they. Don't be amazed when you see it happen. It is part of the fallen world. It is part of the humanity that we live in. But God sees it, and you're going to have to leave it with Him is what you have to do. There are some things you can't fix. And Solomon reminds us there is a God in heaven. He regards all of this, and God will bless a man that will help a poor man. Proverbs 19 and verse 17, he that hath pity upon the poor lendeth unto the Lord, and that which he hath given will he pay him again. Proverbs 22 verse 22, rob not the poor because he is poor, neither oppress the afflicted in the gate, for the Lord will plead their cause and spoil the soul of those that spoil them. If God blesses you with wealth, and He has, don't let that wealth turn you into an oppressor of the poor. Find somebody that is in need and bless them. You could change a life with just a little bit. So be careful that your wealth doesn't cause you to discriminate. In verse 10, there is the danger of deception. Look at verse 10. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them, and what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. The deception of wealth is that it promises something that it can't produce, and that is satisfaction. Nobody has ever been satisfied with silver. There's not enough silver in the world, and very few people are satisfied with what they have. Somebody asked Rockefeller, how much is enough? He said, just a little bit more. Just a little bit more. Now, there's 3 maxims in these verses. You ought to write them down. First of all, the more that I have, the more I want. That's verse 10. He that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity. Greed is never satisfied. If you are materialistic, you will never have enough. And if you're the type of person that has to have the latest, greatest, brightest, best, biggest, then there's never enough. There's no end to the buying and the splurging. Very few people can say there is not another item, not another trinket, not another gadget, not another thing, not another purchase that I want. Very few. I know one. Tim Fellure. There's nothing he wants, all right? But satisfaction doesn't come from buying something. Satisfaction comes from inside. You can't buy your way to joy. You can spend your way to financial ruin, though. You can do that, all right? I thought you'd be shouting by tonight. When the credit card bill comes due, and you find out that you've maxed out 5 cards and you don't even know why, and that McDonald's Happy Meal, by the time it's paid off, you'll have paid $75 for it. There's no joy in that. Amen. When the pain of the debt is greater than the joy of the purchase, that'll be the first step to getting out of debt. The more I have, the more I want. Here's the second maxim. The more I have, the more I will spend. Look at verse 11. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them. When goods increase, they are increased that eat them, and what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? You ever seen a boy get a job, his first job, and all of a sudden he's got a little bit of money in his pocket? And now he's got a new hat and new shoes and new sunglasses. And he's taking all the boys out to lunch, and he's picking up the tab at Burger King. Because, he's got a little bit of money in his pocket, and he's worked so hard to earn that money. It'd be such a shame not to let anybody know that he's got it. And now it's gone. And then the job is gone. And he's just one more poor sucker. Right? Y'all listening to me? I'm helping you what I'm doing. I'm helping you. Right? The more that you have, the more you'll spend. I'll prove it to you. Yeah, you ever notice that you can go out and buy a brand new iPhone, but you can't get just the iPhone? Because now you got to have a case and a screen protector, and a little hook to hold it onto your wrist. And the dumbest of all things, since it's so hard to hold, you got to buy this thing on the back of it to be able to hold your phone. You know what they did? I'm going to help you tonight. I'm going to help you tonight. All right? This is where bottled water came from. There were two guys in France, and they said, you know what? We ought to put water in a bottle and see if we can sell it to dumb Americans. Now you have bottled water. That's how that idea came about. So there's two inventors thinking, you know what? We ought to invent a thing to put on the back just to see. Nobody's going to buy it, but just to see if somebody would buy this thing to hold your iPhone. And now you have it. But spending $500 or whatever on the iPhone is not enough. No, now you have to have insurance for the phone. You have to have a screen protector. I'm telling you, the more you have, the more you spend. That $500 phone, now you got to have $175 of accessories. But that guy that kept the old phone, he don't have to buy a handle for his. He's not worried about a screen protector for his flip phone. Right? A man can go out and can spend $40,000 on a brand new vehicle. That's not enough. Because you got to have some accessories. The mud flaps that come with it are not good. You got to buy different mud flaps, right? And you have to have WeatherTech floor mats. And if you have a used car, if you drive a 1998 Ford F-150, you don't need new mud flaps. In fact, you don't need mud flaps at all. See. It's the truth. That the more that you have, the more that you will spend. You will go to fancier restaurants. You will buy newer gadgets. Man. Reminds me of those men that was in the locker room at a private gym, and their cell phone rang. And so the guy picked it up. Hello. And the woman goes, hello, darling. How are you? Oh, I'm doing fine, sweetie. And she said, honey, I'm down here at the mall just a couple blocks away. And she said they've got this new mink coat out, and it's only $1,500. It's on sale. Would you mind if I bought it? He said, sure, that's fine. Go ahead. You deserve it. And she said, and while I've got you on the phone, she said, I was down at the dealership a while ago, and said they've got these Mercedes, and it's year-end closeout, and there's this Mercedes, and you know we've been talking about Mercedes-Benz, $60,000. Would you mind if I went ahead and bought it? Oh, no, you've been wanting a Mercedes-Benz for a long time. You go ahead and get that. That'll be fine. And honey, just one more thing. The realtor called, and you know that house that we were looking down on the beach side, that little cottage, and it's just our dream home. It's gone back on the market. It's only $275,000. We could sign the contract this evening. Would you mind? Oh, no, you've been wanting that for so long. No problem at all. That's fine. Oh, honey, I appreciate it. She hung up. He said, does anybody know who this cell phone belongs to? I don't know. verse number 12, the more I have, the more I worry. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eat little or much, but the abundance of the rich will not suffer him to sleep. What if it breaks? What if somebody steals it? What if I get sued? I come out of our house the other morning and our garage door was left open all night. Nobody stole anything. There's nothing there that they want. I thought it would be a way to clean the garage out. The rich man has a lot more to worry about than the poor man. What if your investments go south? What if the car breaks down and it costs more in repairs? I'm not against wealth, but be careful of the danger of deception. I've got to hurry. Verse number 13, there's the danger of destruction. There's a sore evil which I've seen under the sun, namely riches kept for the owners thereof to their hurt. Well, those riches perish by evil travail, and he begetteth a son. There is nothing in his hand. He came forth of his mother's womb. Naked shall he return to go as he came. Shall take nothing of his labor, which he may carry away in his hand. This also is a sore evil, that in all points as he came, so shall he go. And what profit hath he that hath labored for the wind? All his days also he eateth in darkness, and he hath much sorrow and wrath with his sickness. Here's what he's saying. Wealth is fleeting, fortunes come and go. He talks about a man who has spent his life accumulating goods to leave to his children, but the riches perish, and then he has nothing to leave to his son. And you will go out of this world with as little as you came into this world. You didn't bring anything in with you, and you won't take it with you when you go. If your life is tied up in possessions, what are you going to do when you can't buy those possessions anymore? Men's lives have been destroyed because they lost their fortune. It's a disaster to have to file bankruptcy and have foreclosure on your house because you're upside down in a house and you bought at the wrong turn and you bought too big of a house, or you're maxed out in credit cards. That's a disaster. It's a disaster, by the way, to graduate from college with student loans of $100,000. It's going to get you a job of $40,000. The danger of destruction. Here's the last one, the danger of discontentment, verse 18. Behold, that which I have seen, it is good and comely for one to eat and to drink, and to enjoy the good of all his labor that he taketh under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. Every man also to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answereth him in the joy of his heart. Here's what Solomon's saying. It's good to work and make a living and enjoy the fruits of your labor, but recognize it is a gift from God and be satisfied with what God gives you. True wealth is not found in gold and silver. True wealth is found in being able to enjoy life and have pleasure in small things. True wealth is having your family around you. True wealth is enjoying relationships. True wealth is enjoying the blessings of God and being content with them. I was in Pensacola yesterday sitting in a waiting room. There was a lady next to me. I thought I recognized her. I looked at her and I did recognize her. If I called her name, some of you would know her. Her husband and her used to be missionaries in the islands, and he was with another church here in town. And years ago, they came home on furlough, and while they were on furlough, he left her and just abandoned her and ran off with another woman. She was left with twin boys. She raised them. Them boys are grown and married out on their own now. So I got to talking to her, and she's been to our church several times. And so, how are you doing? What are you doing? Where are you working? When I said, what are you doing with your life now? What are you doing? And immediately tears came up, and she said, well, as of last year, December 12th, I'm not working. She said, I have bone cancer. So it was discovered in 2015. They wanted to do chemo and all of that. I decided not to. So she's been fighting it and doing well, but it came back with a vengeance. So December 12th was her last day to work. And she said, for January, February, most of March, I was in bed. Couldn't get out of bed. And then a big smile came on her face. She said, but a couple of weeks ago, she said, I had a day where I was able to get up and I was able to sweep the house. I was able to do my dishes. I was able to make the bed and fix lunch. She said, man, I had a great day. It makes you realize how fleeting life is and how futile riches are. And if you can eat and drink and go to work and study and enjoy the simple pleasures of life, you are a blessed person. It's not in gold and silver. You take what God gives you, you be a good steward of it, you be a good manager of it, and you be content with what God has given you. Some of you kids would recognize the name Cyrus McCormick. I would hope that you learned about him in school. He was the son of a farmer in the state of Virginia in the early 1800s. He invented the mechanical reaper in 1831. And before that, farmers had to, piano player come, before that, farmers had to harvest grain with a sickle. And because grain had to be harvested in a short amount of time, of course, it limited to how much grain that you could grow. The reaper became one of the greatest inventions of all time. He invented it in 1831. There was a bank panic in 1837. And Cyrus McCormick went bankrupt. It became very difficult for him to sell his reaper because farmers were skeptical. In 1840, he sold one. In 1841, he sold none. So it looked like that the company would go out of business, that the invention would die. So in 1847, he and his brother moved to Chicago to begin building and manufacturing the reapers. And when he did, he got sued. He was denied patents. His factory burned down. And then he sold 4,000 reapers in 1 year. And became a very wealthy man. But what school probably didn't tell you is that Cyrus McCormick was a Presbyterian. He was a very devout Christian. He was a close friend to D.L. Moody. When D.L. Moody wanted to build the first YMCA in Chicago, Cyrus McCormick wrote him a check for $10,000. When D.L. Moody wanted to start Moody Bible Institute, Cyrus McCormick wrote him a check for $100,000. He became fabulously wealthy, but he used that wealth to further the gospel and the kingdom of God. When God gives you wealth, that's what you're to do with it too. That's what you and I are to do with it. The wealth that God gives you, the job that God gives you, the salary that God gives you, it is not just to fill your garage. It is not just for another trinket and a gadget. And you're talking to a man that has trinkets and gadgets. But it's not just for the biggest and the best and the brightest. That's not what it's for. It's a tool. And you can use that tool for evil. You can use that tool for selfish purposes. Or you can use that tool for good. Cyrus McCormick has been dead for many, many years. The world still benefits from the reaper. But I submit to you that the world benefits more from the money that he gave to the work of the Lord. 3 areas of your life that's connected: worship, words, and wealth. Is your worship meaningful? Are your words trustworthy? Are you content with what you have been given? Are you a giver?